everyone. I'm Congresswoman Grace Meng. Thank you all for being here. Also chair of the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus, or CAPAC. Thank you all for being here today. It's quite ironic that our press conference had to be postponed on Tuesday, so thank you for your flexibility. We had it postponed because Republicans wanted to prevent the House, us, from repealing Trump's tariffs until next year, the same tariffs that are hurting our communities. President Trump promised to lower costs on day one. 9 months into his administration, and the cost of food, gas, clothing, and housing have skyrocketed. Let's be clear, these prices are not rising on their own. They're being driven up by President Trump's reckless tariffs. But don't just take it from me. Here is what Asian American media outlets across the country are reporting. The World Journal said, quote, "Tariffs hit Asian businesses hard. Costs are soaring at 99 Ranch, H Mart, and others." The Korea Times said, quote, "From TVs and smartphones to soy sauce, a pre-tariff stockpiling frenzy," unquote. Nuoi Viet, a Vietnamese media outlet, said, quote, "Wholesale vegetable prices in the US have surged 40%, possibly due to tariffs." And behind those headlines are real people. Ms. Huang, who runs a supermarket in Oakland, California, says that her costs have risen by an average of 50% due to Trump's tariffs. Mr. Ng, a restaurant owner in New York's Chinatown, says prices for spices and seasonings have doubled. As the daughter of small business owners, I know firsthand what is at stake for these hardworking families. These mom and pop stores are being forced to make an impossible choice: raise prices or close down for good. Either way, it's the American people and their families who are losing. As CAPAC chair, I have worked with our caucus to press the administration for answers on how they plan to keep their promise and lower costs. Instead, the administration has doubled down on their policies, even as federal courts found these tariffs to be illegal. And through all of it, Asian American businesses and communities are treated as collateral damage. This is unacceptable. AANHPI entrepreneurs own 11% of small businesses in the US and nearly 20% of restaurants. We are a vital part of America's economy. Yet this administration has proven that they are not working on our behalf. CAPAC will continue to fight for lower costs and a more affordable America. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to our CAPAC Chair Emerita, Judy Chu.
Thank you, Chair Meng. I'm Congressmember Judy Chu. I represent California's 28th District in Southern California, and I'm Chair Emerita of CAPAC. We are here today because Donald Trump's reckless tariffs are wreaking havoc on small businesses and working families across the country, and they're having an especially harmful impact on AANHPI businesses and families, including so many in my district who are suffering needless pain and uncertainty because of absurdly high tariffs on everyday goods. For example, one of my constituents runs a family business importing medicinal oils from Asia. After the president's tariff announcement, their import costs skyrocketed overnight from $500 to $13,000 for one single shipment. They may be forced to close their doors and lay off workers. Another small company in my district sells US-made industrial tools abroad, but because of Trump's tariffs, tens of thousands of dollars in orders are stuck, and customers are already turning to other countries. These are American-made products built by American workers, and yet Trump's tariffs are driving business away. And for the people in my district who are desperately trying to rebuild their homes after the devastating LA fires in January, they are being forced to use cheaper, weaker materials because tariffs have made the cost of lumber and building materials skyrocket. This is a cruel betrayal and just one of the many ways that the Trump administration has made it harder for disaster survivors to rebuild their lives. This is the reality of Trump's agenda. And the pain doesn't stop there. Grocery prices are up, gas prices are up, and housing costs and inflation are rising. It's no surprise that as a result last month, we saw the worst job growth since the pandemic. And Republicans' big, ugly bill is pouring gasoline on the fire by kicking 15 million people off their health care and letting ACA tax credits expire, which will send premiums soaring by as much as 18%, which is the biggest increase in 15 years. Trump promised to lower costs on day one, but 99% of Americans will have less income after taxes because of his tariffs and the big ugly bill. That's no accident. In an economy built for billionaires, Trump and Republicans have rigged the system so everything works exactly as they intended. Because the truth is, Republicans could end this any day. Democrats have a bill to end these tariffs right now. Speaker Johnson could bring it to a vote today. They could join Democrats to stop these job-killing tariffs and protect working families, but they would rather force their constituents to pay more for food and housing than stand up to Donald Trump. But we will not back down, and that's why we're here today. As a member of the Ways and Means Committee, which has jurisdiction over trade, I will not stop fighting to hold this administration accountable, reverse these despicable policies, and fight for an economy that works for small businesses and working families, not billionaires. Thank you, and I would now like to turn the podium over to CAPAC Second Vice Chair, Jill Takuda.
Let's just call these tariffs exactly what they are. These tariffs are a racist tax that disproportionately attacks our Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander communities. What we are seeing today, sadly, is nothing new. It's a pattern. It's a racist pattern. And this Trump administration is continuing to carry it forward, and this GOP Congress is capitulating to his racist moves. They are literally going after the very core of who we are. The businesses that we built, the food that we eat, the ties to the places that we came from. And here's the thing, too often, even here in the halls of Congress, people just expect Asians to take it on the chin, to stay quiet, to swallow our pain, to accept the racism, the degradation, and the harms. But we're here to tell you, not today. Not these Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander representatives, not any Asians. You know, here's the thing. Again, we are seeing a clear and dangerous pattern, a continuation of the xenophobic allegations and actions the Trump administration started in its first term and are continuing it to today. Donald Trump blamed us for the pandemic, which we know and we had to address as CAPAC members, fueled a wave of anti-Asian violence, hate, and crime. He's once again stirring up the China initiative, targeting our scholars, the land we buy, our people, our very existence, leading to, again, more unfounded anti-Asian hate in this country. And as we've seen literally in the last few weeks or months, he's dishonored and disrespected our allies in Asia. When you think about it, our top trading partners and our top investors into the United States, providing jobs, providing GDP directly, are from Asia. Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, Vietnam, India. Yet look at what he's done. International students, Asian students in particular, researchers, targeted, their visas denied, delayed, viewed with suspicion and contempt, forcing many of them to actually self-choose to leave this country. Over 300 South Korean workers shackled, chained together, handcuffed, demoralized, dishonored, detained, that we're here to actually teach Americans how to run the battery plant that they were investing in our country. I mean, talk about the hypocrisy of demanding that South Korea invest in America, shake hands with its president, only to then target, detain, and again, dishonor their people. This is shameful, what they're doing. And then that's just the global part. Let's talk even about how domestically he is trying to pit black against brown. He has unfairly stripped $350 million from minority-serving educational institutions. Institutions in every single one of our districts that give our children, our people, a chance, a fighting chance at the American dream. For many, the reason they came to this country, the way they have continued to give back to this country through their investments, their businesses, everything that we do. And to take $350 million from our minority-serving institutions, and we truly 100% support the investments in historically black colleges and universities and tribal colleges, which is important, but to once again leave ANHPI and Hispanic serving institutions behind, that is not acceptable. These are not isolated actions. I repeat that. These are not isolated. This is not the first time. This is not about policy nuances. This is not even about trade policy or economic policy. These, let's be very, very clear at who they're targeting. These are targeted racist actions, plain and simple, and it's not acceptable. Our ANHPI communities are not threats. There are over 3 million ANHPI businesses in this country. We employ over 5 million people. We contribute over $1 trillion to Americans' economy. And the way the president and this GOP-controlled Congress chooses to thank us for that is to attack the very way we are able to achieve the American dream, through tariffs and through racist actions. This is just beyond offensive. Quite frankly, I think it's criminal, it's unconscionable, it's unfathomable. We have taken this for too long, but we're not going to continue to sit back and just accept this. And so I am proud that CAPAC is standing up, not just for tariffs, against tariffs. CAPAC is not just standing up against tariffs. We're standing up for our people and our communities, our way of life, who we are, and these racist, discriminatory attacks this administration continues to promulgate against our community. And with that, I would like to turn the mic over to Representative Dave Mint.
Thank you for those words, Jill. Congressman Dave Mint, and before entering into elected office, I was a law and economics professor. And I want to just make a couple things clear here. First, when we talk about tariffs, they are taxes. Tariffs are a regressive tax that go on imported goods, raising the cost for average people out there on the goods, including all these products you see in front of you that they see. There's a reason we're seeing much higher prices at the stores, because that's what tariffs do. They raise the cost of our goods. And anyone telling you otherwise is trying to gaslight you. The second legal point I want to make is that these tariffs are completely illegal. That Congress, and only Congress, has the power to levy new taxes. And what Donald Trump has done is he has completely mischaracterized a 1977 law, the International Economic Emergency Powers Act, claiming that there's an emergency to justify the imposition of tariffs across the board on every country that we do trade with. There is no emergency other than the economic crisis being created right now by Donald Trump's poorly thought out policies. And you don't just have to take my word for that. Listen to every economist out there back in 2024, today. They all said the same thing, that tariffs of this level would be disastrous for our economy. In fact, the last time we had tariffs this high was in the 1920s. And as we know, those tariffs caused or contributed greatly to the Great Depression that we experienced back then. And right now we're on track for something similar. We can see the signs, rising inflation, perhaps double digit very soon, a massive loss in jobs to the point where Donald Trump fired his director of the Bureau of Labor Statistics because he didn't like the reports they were producing. So now we don't have reliable data we can trust, but we know what tariffs are doing to our economy here in the United States. They are raising costs on everything, and that includes in my district, where I have spent the last few months trying to visit local businesses, talking to my constituents, and we've heard the same stories we hear from around the country. Consumers are facing higher prices. But it's also impacting jobs right now. The tariffs are destroying the jobs that we create in this country. As one example, I have a local electronics manufacturer in my district, and they were explaining that because of the way that the supply chain works today, they will import goods, say from Korea or China or Vietnam or Canada, then they will improve them, send them off to somewhere else. They get improved in another country, come back to the United States. This might happen 3 or 4 times with a particular product. And every time it crosses a border, another tariff is imposed, creating massive aggregate effects on their prices and their costs of goods that they're trying to sell. And what he was telling me is that he would have to lay off workers or consider moving his entire operation out of Irvine, in my district, into another area, maybe another country like Canada or Mexico, because it's cheaper just manufacturing one time in another country and not having those aggregate tariffs add up than to have it in the United States with these chaotic and poorly thought out policies. At the same time, I talked to a general contractor who told me because they take bids from subcontractors, that they were seeing their orders drop off to zero because no customers wanted to agree to pay for a project, a housing project, a commercial real estate project, something like that that might happen in 6 months or a year, not knowing what the input costs were going to be at that point. The uncertainty of the wanton ways in which Donald Trump is imposing these tariffs is creating mass uncertainty right now. And so it's not only just driving up our costs a ton, it is so devastating to jobs in this country. And I would just close with this. Jill talked about the raid on the LG Hyundai plant in Georgia. But if these guys were actually serious about trying to bring manufacturing back to the United States, which is a goal I think many of us share, we want to see more manufacturing done here in the United States. Why are they raiding a plant and making a public spectacle out of handcuffing and shackling Korean workers who are there to train up and start the plant that is going to employ thousands of Americans? This is not an administration that cares about manufacturing. They're not an administration that cares about thoughtful and good economic policy. This is an administration right now that is being driven by xenophobia and, yes, racism. And I'm proud to be a part of CAPAC as we stand up to these policies, stand up for our constituents. And with that, I have the privilege of turning it over to our colleague from Hawaii, Representative Ed Case.
Thank you so much, colleagues, and to all listening, aloha. Together with Rep. Tokuda, I am privileged to represent the state in our country with by far the highest percentage of Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders. And I believe I speak for them by saying that in the big picture, we are facing the most destructive, most reckless implementation of trade policy by any president in at least a century. Destructive and reckless in many different ways. My colleagues have spoken to the first and foremost fact that it is illegal, that it's a usurpation of congressional power. The second and most direct, destructive and reckless impact is on our own economy. And let's not talk economy, let's talk small businesses, mom and pop operations, consumers trying to balance their budget. Because the net effect of this tariff and trade policy will be to drive our economy down and our costs up. And we are only now seeing the front lines of that happening, but it will happen if we continue down this road. And the third consequence goes way beyond tariff and trade policy. It goes to our basic relationships with the rest of the world, where we've enjoyed for generations now an interchange of trade that has lifted all boats. And yet we are walking away from that now. And there is a consequence of doing so, especially with our friends and allies in the Asia Pacific, where so many of our citizens have their origins. Now, these are big picture topics that I'm talking about, but let's reduce it to some real basic, real world situations. I'll give you 3 from my district. And I've spent the last couple of months walking my district, getting out of my office, just what I call walk story, walking my communities randomly and talking to people as I encounter them. And I'll give you 3. The first, a mom and pop photo shop, first-gen immigrants from Asia. They operate on the margins to start with. They've made a living. They've raised a family, very successful children. They've done everything to advance. as we all try to do. They're about to go out of business. Why? Because their goods come from overseas, and because they cannot sustain the higher prices that are caused by these tariffs and are passed through to their customers. They're already on the margins. They're at risk. This is a real world situation. I'll give you another example. A company in Hawaii owned by an AA and HPI who manufacture custom Hawaiian potato chips. They're very good, by the way. Now they import many of their ingredients from Asia, and they manufacture them and improve them in Hawaii. And those are also definitely on the margin today. How much higher can they put their prices? Not only is this a matter of import, this is also a matter of export, because those chips, they turn around and export back around the world, including back to the Asia Pacific countries. They are directly impacted by tariffs. And a third example, which sometimes seems foreign to people in Washington, D.C., but many of our community in Hawaii and throughout our country utilize traditional cultural medicines for their own health care. They rely on these, they're safe, they work, and yet those too are now subject to tariffs. That's part of their health care, and they are going to have a much harder time yielding or getting the results of the health care that they need. So we can talk fancy words here in Washington, D.C. about tariffs and trade and Congress and rescission and all that kind of stuff. But these are consequences that are real world consequences that fall on real people. And this administration has been completely insensitive and even reckless on those consequences to real world people in our communities, and disproportionately reckless and consequential to our AA and HPI communities, who rely in one way or another disproportionately on a trade relationship, especially with the countries of the Asia Pacific, that keeps costs low, keeps trade flowing, and keeps people rising. So we need to stop this. And so if there's one message here, this is the real world here for the communities that we are proud to represent. And as you listen to this out there, we ask you to communicate with your member of Congress, whether or not you have AA and HPI communities, as we all do, in any real number, and tell them that this is happening in your community too, and that you want this Congress to stop this president. With that, I'm very privileged to introduce our colleague from California, Vice Chair of our Democratic Caucus, Mr. Ted Lieu.
Thank you, Representative Case, and thank you to all the members of CAPAC who are here today. I want to tell you a story about my parents. They immigrated from Taiwan to America. They came to seek the American dream. My parents were poor, they did not speak English well, and they went to flea markets to sell gifts to make ends meet. Over many years of hard work, they were able to open gift and jewelry stores in shopping malls. They employed many Americans, and they were able to provide a good education for my brother and me. We would help watch the store because they have to pay us. But eventually, it became clear that they achieved the American dream. And our story is not unique. It is a story that's replicated across generations, across billions of people. America is an amazing country for offering the American dream, and now it is at risk of being crushed by the policies of Donald Trump and House Republicans. We know that inflation has increased under the Trump administration. We know that jobs have decreased. The jobs report that was released last month was horrible. And we know it's horrible because Trump had to fire the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics to distract from how horrible it was. Turns out when you fire the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, you can't actually change math, because the jobs report that came out this month was also horrible. Employment increased to 4.3%, the highest in nearly 4 years. And then you added that the crushing effect of tariffs. According to Yale Budget Lab, that's going to increase costs $2,400 on ordinary Americans. and then small businesses bear the brunt of these tariffs. And no matter what Republicans try to say, what Trump says, the actual truth is the way tariffs work is when these products come to the United States, it is the American business that pays for it when they accept their products at the ports. Literally, the small business has to write a check to the United States Treasury in order to get these products. And so a lot of small businesses don't have the money to write that check. So then these American small businesses, some of them are Asian American, Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander, they go out of business. And then the ones that can write a check, well, guess what? They end up passing the costs to consumers who then pay more. So essentially, this is a large tax increase on small businesses and also on consumers. And here at the Congressional Asian Pacific Caucus, we're asking for Trump and Republicans to stop crushing the American dream, stop crushing Americans economically, and please reverse these tariffs.
Thank you so much to all our CAPAC members. That is the conclusion of our press conference. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Chairwoman Meng. At the same time as we're seeing the tariffs impact on prices, including in AAPI communities, we're also seeing ICE raids that are impacting many of your districts and AAPI communities. Can you talk about how, is there a tie-in? Is that, what is the ultimate impact that you're seeing in your communities of these ICE raids, and is that having, what kind of impact is that having on the economy as well?
Sure, I can start a little bit, and then anyone feels free to chime in. This is a very scary time for many of our shared communities in this country. If you are not of the right color or background, you are very likely to be targeted. It's not just immigrants, it's people sometimes who are green card holders or American citizens. The case in Georgia is a perfect example of how the Trump administration is not prioritizing public safety as they promised to our communities and all Americans. People obviously want border security. They want immigrants with very violent criminal records to be deported, but they are, not being thoughtful about this process at all. In Georgia, they, after asking South Korea, an ally and a friend of the United States, paid them the biggest insult and literally, in a very disrespectful way, went after and deported people who were literally trying to help make America great again. So if public safety was their agenda, they are not meeting that at all. And they are instilling fear in so many of our families and our communities whose members are scared to go to work. They are scared to send their children to school. They are scared to participate in civic activities. So it's something that is very harmful for the economy.
I think Grace hit it on the nose. It's about creating a culture and environment of fear. That's really what these raids do, whether it's the largest in history at the Georgia plant, whether it's raids we see in coffee farms in Hawaii, small back alleys in front of Chinatowns, wherever it might be. It's about creating this culture of fear, how it impacts our economy. And I've talked to investors and business leaders from Japan, from Taiwan, from other areas. It's creating quite the chilling effect across our Indo-Pacific allies in terms of coming into this country and actually investing their dollars. Do they feel safe bringing their people here to be able to set up these businesses, to train workers? It wasn't just South Koreans that were a part of the mix. You also had Japanese nationals rounded up as well, I believe Indian. You had Chinese as well, Hispanic, individuals rounded up. And so there was an affront to multiple countries. And what this signals to our trade allies is be careful and beware. Because the last thing anyone wants to see, especially Asian countries and Asian people, is a dishonorment and a disrespect of people being literally carted out in chains on public television, on videos that's streaming right back home, they do not absolutely want to see their people put through anything like that again. And so the chilling effect, I do feel, will have significant ripple effects on our economy here in our country.
So as a Korean American, I've obviously taken an intense interest in the raid in Georgia on the LG Hyundai plant. But I also was able to visit Korea a few months ago on a congressional delegation trip. And even back then, I'll tell you that every time a tourist, whether Korean or not, was held up by ICE, whenever someone was mistreated, back then you may remember that the Trump administration was trying to deport students in this country who had misdemeanors, jaywalking, minor offenses, who were here on student visas. All of them were Asian American. I think there were like 150 in the University of California system alone. All of this, as you might imagine, was making front page news in the Korean newspapers. People were hyper aware of that. And of course, there's the fear element that we see with ICE and the fact that you have unmarked vans roaming around neighborhoods with masked people in them. And as someone in my community just remarked to me the other day, they're not sure when they see one of these vans if it's these gangs of burglars casing the neighborhood or whether it's ICE at this point. That's the point where we've gotten to as a society. But on the economic front, I will tell you, in addition to the fact that a lot of our goods are now rising in prices, construction costs are clearly going up, and that's driving a lot of the inflation as well. We're seeing a huge drop in tourism right now. We're seeing a drop in students coming to this country. I'm told, I represent the University of California, Irvine, and the number of foreign PhD students has immediately dropped to something close to zero. These are the best and brightest minds who are doing cancer research, aviation, leading technology companies. And of course, you all know that over half of the unicorn companies, billion-dollar-plus startups in this country, were started by immigrants. We are losing that pipeline right now because of the ICE raids, coupled with the huge cuts to research funding. We are seeing a drop in tourism. I met with the South Asian Hotel Owners Association just yesterday, and one of them, in addition to owning hotels in my district, also owns some in the area where the raids in Georgia had happened. And he told me that overnight, that night, 20% of their bookings were canceled when that news leaked out. We are seeing drops in tourism reported. I was talking to my local Huntington Beach Chamber of Commerce. They are reporting something like a 10 to 15% drop right now in foreign tourism. And everybody is concerned in California and Southern California that the World Cup and Olympics, which were supposed to be huge draws for our local economy, are going to see really muted tourism because of the fears of ICE right now. So those effects really are aggregating, and in a district that relies heavily on tourism, relies heavily on really smart minds building new companies, we're seeing just a ton of impacts to our jobs. Hotels are closing down. We're seeing a lot of tourism-related businesses suffering. And of course, we're very worried about the next generation of innovation companies that are not going to come out of our universities because of these policies.
I want to thank Grace Mang and Dave Min and Joe Takuda for their great work in pushing back against the reckless raid at the Hyundai plant in Georgia. Based on public reporting, a number of these workers had legitimate B1 visas that allow them to work in the United States. And there is a gray area because the B1 visa allows you, for example, to basically help put in Korean machinery that they need to operate these plants. Well, does that mean you can tell someone how to do it, but you can't yourself actually touch that piece of equipment and put it in? Who knows? It's a gray area, it's ambiguous. But what the administration did is, instead of trying to work it out with Hyundai and how people interpret B1 visas, they launched the most massive raid ever on people with legitimate B1 visas, shackled them up, made them do this completely embarrassing, disrespectful walk in shackles, and it was completely disrespectful to South Korea. Now the administration has had to walk that back. And so people need to be fired at ICE, who authorized this reckless, stupid raid that's now causing other countries to not want to invest in the United States. It's going to cause a loss of American jobs. And if you have a dispute on B1 visa, well, let's have it out in the open and tell the companies, look, we interpret this in a way no other administration has chosen to interpret it. But don't embarrass the people who are here, and you're going to prevent investment in the United States, and that's just dumb.
Your colleague Adam Smith says he'll likely go to China this month, and President Trump is expected to call President Xi tomorrow. And since so many Asian American businesses import from China, is there any sort of message or action that you would like to see either from Smith or Trump in terms of engaging Beijing?
I don't know the specifics. I haven't talked to Ranking Member Smith yet. But look, this is a common goal of all of our Democratic caucus and CAPAC, of course, is to support and expand and boost manufacturing in the United States. What the Trump administration has done so far has not helped that. In fact, jobs in the manufacturing sector have actually decreased in this Trump administration. So as he is going over there to talk about making sure that America has the upper hand, we must make sure here in the United States that there is not a target put on the backs of Chinese Americans or Asian Americans. The rhetoric that we use coming out of those talks and afterwards is very important as well. Thank you, everyone.